Paradigms are made of steel and delicate glass. Any given one is foundational and seemingly unshakable until a knock sideways leaves a pile of rubbish in its stead. A new one takes time to construct, leaving us in what Charles Eisenstein calls a space between stories. This is an exploration of just such a space. The final rupture between nature and humanity happened with urbanization. A false dichotomy erected swiftly, like a Dubai skyscraper. Before this, there was a trickle of technologies attempting to capture and circumvent aspects of the natural environment, but the dam didn't burst until the circle of life was spliced and scattered. The connection between our food, our shelter, and our bodies got scattered along with it. The unknown and removed feels unknowable. It must be tamed and controlled to create a sense of safety for the new human entity that seemingly stands apart from the cosmos that birthed it. This fractured and misaligned relationship with the system that sustains us is most clearly mirrored in our own disembodied experience of selfhood. Our bodies, like the earth body, became something to be ignored, pathologized, or dominated. Seen as something unpredictable, inexplicably prone to breakdowns, it too became a source of fear. Cultural hierarchy bricklayers stacked intellect at the top of the pyramid, along with the technologies used to bend nature to our will. Importantly, we consented, in the name of comfort and efficiency and implied superiority of the human race. Observed closely, however, it becomes obvious that our comforts are not without a cost. One that's much closer to home than the purportedly melting ice caps of Antarctica. So close, in fact, that it permeates our homes, our food supply, and our bodies. A toxic potion that we mix into the sweet cocktail of the Internet of Things, 24-hour lighting, and tap water. I compare what is occurring to a collective ritual suicide in slow motion, says Alfonso Balmori, a biologist studying the effects of man-made electromagnetic fields. My body is everywhere. The bomb which destroys my house also damages my body, insofar as the house was already an indication of my body, Sartre proclaimed in his Being and Nothingness magnum opus. Where does the human body end and space begin? Sarah Ahmed, building on Judith Butler's idea of materialization, states that it is through the intensification of pain sensations that bodies and worlds materialize and take shape, producing the effect of boundary, surface, and fixity. This line of reasoning implies that both bodies and spaces are much more fluid and boundless than might seem, until a spark of pain erects temporary victim and aggressor partitions. We speak of bones of a house as if they're separate from our own, yet the very act of anthropomorphizing our dwellings hints at the intuitive knowing that our skinned bodies and our space bodies are tethered by a thread that can stretch but never break. My sense is that any boundaries are ephemeral at best, illusory divisions that dissolve when we remember that we literally ingest, inhale, absorb, and co-pulsate with the entirety of our domestic surroundings. The fascia of our homes stretches into our organs and muscle tissues. It dances with our mitochondria and fires with our nervous system. Space body exists as a biosphere in symbiosis that may or may not be of benefit to any given participant. There are all the usual suspects, including light, water, air, electricity, and the plant, animal, and microbe constituents that vary widely from one domicile to the next. There's a topography and a materiality, both of which have direct impact on one or more of the above. Curiously, exactly the same statements can be made about the human body. Thus, in our domestic cocoons, we exist as a body within a body, fiber woven into the fabric of our environments, not loosely stitched on top of, but foundationally connected through every breath and every heartbeat. Furthermore, bioenergetically, we co-regulate with the spaces we live in. No shifts in the space body go unnoticed by the skin body, and vice versa. So how is it then that we moved into spaces of evolutionary mismatch? The disembodiment that was required to complete the journey was too gradual to notice. The human body was first split into thoughts and mechanical supports required to run the thought machine. Pain and forbidden pleasure became the primary points of contact with the body below the neck in a hit-and-run dynamic. Even in complete bodily breakdown scenarios, a mechanic will be sought out, while the connection between body and mind remains severed. The space body was likewise dissected into elements of convenience, sterility, and eternal youth. Convenience was anointed as the highest ruler of the domestic landscape, sneakily collecting health levies while posing as the kind and benevolent monarch. Sterility showed up as an erasure of nature, which incidentally implies erasure of humanity itself. We scrubbed and sanitized all signs of natural life from our living spaces, leaving us with a chemical fume soup to complete the self-extermination process. Finally, erasure of time was accomplished through novel man-made materials that were at once physically fragile and existentially immortal. Time's paintbrush was powerless against the plastics of the modern age, leaving the smooth, shiny surface in a state of perpetual newness that ironically didn't age well. As we became disconnected from our bodies, we lost touch with the biofeedback of our living spaces. In the mind, convenience conflated with comfort and comfort conflated with well-being. But well-being doesn't take the elevator or spend hours staring at blue light screens after dark. Dominance over nature is the delusion of the mind. Despite the consciousness disconnect, human and space bodies continue to integrate with new lighting, electricity, Wi-Fi, air fumes, and public water supply inserted into the organism. Mysterious illnesses materialized and got blamed on everything from insufficient sterility to bad genes and bad behavior. We poisoned the space body in a poetic self-annihilation. Now we are outsourcing the search for the antidote to the same institutions that created the poison. I don't know the sound of silence. I'm sitting at my writing table alone in a house situated in a park. No discernible sounds penetrate the walls and hurricane-proof window panes from the outside. But inside, the walls are buzzing like muffled hummingbirds in perpetual motion. The refrigerator and the air conditioner sporadically join this chorus, creating a soundscape that starts to grind on my nervous system. I bite my lip rhythmically, mirroring the electrically charged noises. They're out of sync with the visual landscape of this room. I am out of sync, which frustrates me since by all accounts, I have carved a little oasis for myself in the midst of a tropical paradise. This energy inside the walls and appliances has a markedly different quality from the energy of the plants that extend the park on the outside into my living room interior. I flip off all the switches in the electrical panel and feel a shift in my breathing pattern. The sound of the pen staining the thin pages of my moleskin makes me feel monastic. Exactly the sort of thing I was after when I designed this space. I briefly wonder how long it would take for food to start melting in my freezer, gradually sweating out all the sonic hummingbirds from the plastic packaging. The plants are speaking to me more loudly now. They're very convincing. Let it all melt. Embrace the darkness, the wetness, and the heat. You are darkness and wetness and heat. I believe them. I got into a standoff with a squirrel. Caught it red-handed trying to eat my sunflower sprouts. These sprouts were my omen that all was going to flourish again after the most difficult 2 years of my life pushed me to the edge of despair. Shooing it away only made it move a few feet before it spun around, stopping dead in its tracks to give me a glare of steel. Not to be out-alphaed by a squirrel, I stared back. The territorial squabble ended with me grabbing my planter with sprouts and pulling it back into the safety of my living room, making me grateful for the solid and impenetrable delineation of my turf. Friends again with the buzzing walls that protect and isolate, soothe and irritate. My feet rest on the cold tile floor. They understand the rock-like essence of this unrock-like flatness, delineating a room so large that a New Yorker in me starts constructing phantom partitions in my mind. It's 90 degrees outside, yet I'm wearing a sweater and drinking a hot tea. My body can sense the incongruence, for a smooth glide of the French doors would instantly transport it to a scorching hot tile of another sort. As a compromise, I made an offering to my confused feet of real river rocks imported from India with a Home Depot pit stop. Most of the time, these rocks rest quietly in their 5x10 container, absorbing the same cold air as the tile. The only source of disturbance for these Indian rocks, ironically enough, is my entrance into their midst for my meditation rituals. They helplessly shift around and bang loudly against the wood when I step into their territory. The sensation for me is intense. My feet balance on the tipping point between pain and pleasure. In this sense, this box of rocks captures the very essence of what the Tao refers to as the middle path. Many homes and many experiences of embodiment ago, I switched to LED lights because a well-meaning sales clerk at a hardware store said they would last way longer and save me money. This was before I knew that my body runs on electricity, before I knew that the blue flickering light waves would disrupt my hormonal and neurological function in the most subtle of ways. Sleep floating like a fog over my bed, twilight anesthesia that never quite allowed for a complete loss of consciousness. My current domicile, that I have only half-jokingly dubbed the temple, is mostly illuminated with halogen lights that don't get turned on until sunset. Computer and phone screens still abound. I have known for a while now that even this lighting solution has me playing a delusional game of chicken with sun, moon, and my cellular biology. I recently read that discovery of fire was the first bit of technology that shifted Homo sapien reproductive process into a year-round affair, from what used to be a seasonal undertaking. My mind is transported into a prehistoric world, trying to glean what the protocol was for the off-season. Was it just the abandon of pure pleasure without a need to trick, scheme, or otherwise attempt to outsmart the body? Back in my house, I'm daydreaming about slowing down my life to match the seasonal cycles of the sun. Even to myself, my internal dialogue sounds fanatical. Yet this other connection between light and speed, the one unexplored by physicists, is intriguing. Would my productivity come to a halt if I spend 12 hours a day in the darkness of my dwelling? Or is the extra rest going to hone my focus, energy, and attention, boosting my productivity exponentially during daylight hours? It crosses my mind that the cyclical nature of sunlight seamlessly builds in existential mindfulness and embodied integration that I seem to have to work so hard for when I insist on operating outside of the container provided by the sun. And what of the spirit? Words may weave a tectonic fabric, but every piece of architecture also constructs a text, posits Jill Stoner in Toward a Minor Architecture. My narrative is born and reborn daily, bookended by these walls, or maybe just a set of thresholds that shift depending on my mood. The sentience of my domestic surroundings is palpable and comforting, taking on supporting or leading roles in my constructed storyline. We share memories, individual and collective, witness each other in states of complete undress, our most vulnerable parts exposed. We safeguard each other's secrets, sharing an intimacy no lover can hope to compete with. It wasn't always like this. Every space I have ever lived in was a mirror of my existential state at that stage. It wasn't a mirror I always wanted to look in, but regardless, there it was, permeating every nook and cranny of my apartment. Wooden floors and brick walls faithfully reflecting back all of my triumphs and traumas. These reflections collected in pools on my living room floors, piled up in my kitchen sinks, saturated the air in my bedrooms. They shape-shifted in real time, tracking my mind and body more accurately than an MRI machine. Interestingly, my recursive spatial writing, informed by this interiority, reaches beyond the boundaries of this townhouse, far past the fencing of this backyard and into the latent possibilities for exteriority that awaits both desire and opportunity. The space comes full circle. The trees that have left the verdant jungles of Thailand and tall forests of the Pacific Northwest support my body as I dream of expansion. Contraction and saturation of materiality that came together to shape my narrative and existential cocoon is released once more through the portal of my kinetic embodiment.